The penthouse suite at the Address Downtown Hotel gleamed like a golden cage against Dubai's glittering skyline. December 2021 had brought cooler winds to the desert metropolis. But inside the luxury accommodation, the air was thick with champagne, rose petals, and the promise of new beginnings. By morning, that same air would carry the stench of betrayal and death. This is the story of Dalia Farouqi, a 23-year-old fashion graduate whose wedding night became her execution. Her killer, Sheikh Saif Al-Mansouri, one of the Gulf's most powerful shipping magnates, a man whose fury at discovering his bride's past would transform celebration into carnage. But to understand how a young woman's dreams died in a suite worth more than most people's homes, we must first understand how desperation can drive a father to sell his daughter's future to the devil himself. 18 months earlier, Farhan Farouqi had stood in his glass-walled office on Sheikh Zayed Road, watching Dubai's construction cranes pierce the sky like metallic prayers. His company, Platinum Occasions, occupied an entire floor of a prestigious tower, its marble reception adorned with photographs of legendary events. Royal weddings worth tens of millions, corporate galas that made international headlines, celebrity parties that defined Dubai's reputation as the world's playground for the ultra-wealthy. Farhan had built his empire over 15 years, transforming a modest catering business into the Gulf's premier luxury event management company. His client list read like a directory of Middle Eastern royalty and international billionaires. The 2020 season had been booked solid with spectacular celebrations, each promising profits that would secure his family's future for generations. Then COVID-19 arrived like a plague of locusts, devouring everything in its path. The first cancellation came in March 2020. A royal wedding in Abu Dhabi with 1,000 guests and a budget exceeding 50 million dirhams. The palace secretary's terse email announcing indefinite postponement due to health concerns became the first domino in a cascade of catastrophe. Within days, corporate galas, private parties, cultural festivals, every event that had promised revenue vanished as the UAE government imposed strict gathering restrictions. By December 2020, Farhan's staff of 42 had been reduced to 3 desperate employees. His fleet of luxury vehicles disappeared into the hands of repossession agents. His prestigious office was handed back to landlords with apologetic explanations. The Jumeirah villa where his family had lived in comfort for a decade was sold to pay creditors, forcing them into a modest apartment in Dara where the walls were thin and the future uncertain. The lawyer's ultimatum had been delivered with clinical precision: 48 hours to settle 3.2 million dirhams in outstanding debt, or face criminal charges under UAE bounce check laws. In the Emirates, financial crimes carried devastating penalties. Prison sentences stretched for years. Travel bans trapped defaulters in the country they could no longer afford to live in. Complete social disgrace followed families for generations. Farhan's hands trembled as he calculated the impossible mathematics of his situation in early 2021. His wife Layla earned barely enough as a school administrator to cover their monthly rent. His son Omar clutched acceptance letters to universities they could never afford. His daughter Dalia had just returned from London with her fashion degree, expecting to launch a career that now seemed as distant as the stars themselves. It was in this darkness that desperation made him remember Sheikh Saif Al-Mansouri. Sheikh Saif's private majlis occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming tower in Dubai Marina, its marble floors covered with Persian carpets worth more than most people's lifetime earnings. The 57-year-old shipping magnate received visitors in a room that resembled a modern throne room, where intricate Arabic calligraphy adorned walls lined with rare books and artifacts collected from across the Islamic world. His business empire controlled the largest private port logistics network in the Gulf region, with commercial tentacles reaching across Asia, Africa, and Europe. Ships bearing the distinctive Al-Mansouri logo carried everything from luxury automobiles to construction materials, generating billions in annual revenue. But vast wealth had never satisfied Sheikh Saif's deeper, darker hungers. 3 marriages had ended in bitter divorces, each wife eventually fleeing his controlling nature and explosive temper. His pattern was always the same: initial charm giving way to possessive surveillance, romantic gestures replaced by violent outbursts, love transformed into imprisonment. His most recent ex-wife had taken their children to London 6 years ago, refusing to return to Dubai despite court orders and financial pressure. At 57, Sheikh Saif found himself alone in his golden tower, surrounded by servants who feared him and business associates who respected only his money. He was starved of the one thing his billions couldn't simply purchase: a beautiful young wife who couldn't escape his grasp. When Farhan arrived at the Majlis wearing his last remaining designer suit, Sheikh Saif received him with the polite curiosity of a predator studying wounded prey. Years earlier, Farhan had organized a spectacular birthday celebration aboard the Sheikh's private yacht, a floating palace with international performers and Michelin-starred chefs. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Sheikh Saif inquired about Farhan's family, specifically mentioning his vague memory of a daughter studying abroad. Farhan's face brightened with paternal pride as he described Dalia's achievements: her first-class honors degree from Central St. Martin's in London, her exceptional talent for fashion design. Sheikh Saif's request to see photographs seemed innocent enough. Without thinking, Farhan pulled out his phone and navigated to Dalia's Instagram account, revealing image after image of a stunning young woman with long dark hair, expressive brown eyes, and graceful features that combined traditional Middle Eastern elegance with cosmopolitan sophistication. Sheikh Saif's eyes fixed on the screen with predatory focus, his breathing subtly altered as he studied each image with the intensity of a collector examining a rare artifact. The proposition that followed would haunt Farhan for the rest of his life. Sheikh Saif offered a complete solution: marriage to his daughter in exchange for immediate debt clearance of 3.2 million dirhams, plus an additional 5 million dirhams to restart the business. Dreams, the Sheikh observed with chilling casualness, don't pay debts or prevent prison sentences. He was offering salvation: the Farouqi family's honor restored, Farhan's freedom preserved, and Dalia's future guaranteed through marriage to one of the Gulf's most powerful men. 24 hours to decide, the Sheikh announced. After that deadline, the offer would expire, and Farhan could explain to his family why he had chosen pride over their survival. The small apartment in Dara felt like a prison cell compared to the spacious Jumeirah villa where Dalia had grown up surrounded by marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Now she sat at a cramped kitchen table, her fashion design portfolio spread across the scratched surface, sketching evening gowns that seemed as distant as fairy tales. Her Central St. Martin's diploma hung on the thin wall behind her, a reminder of dreams that had once felt within reach. The sound of her father's key in the lock made her look up with genuine excitement. She had been working on a collection inspired by traditional Emirati embroidery techniques, reimagined for contemporary fashion. Her sketches showed flowing abayas transformed into haute couture, geometric patterns creating stunning visual narratives across silk and chiffon. This was her vision for establishing herself in Dubai's emerging fashion scene, bridging heritage with innovation. But something in Farhan's ashen face, the way his hands trembled as he set down his car keys, made her enthusiasm die in her throat. The portfolio suddenly felt meaningless as her father explained everything: the debts that threatened to destroy them, the legal threats that could send him to prison, the choice that would save or damn their entire family. The words hit her like physical blows. Marriage. To a stranger. A man older than her father. Her refusal came immediately, desperate and raw, her voice rising with each protestation. She wasn't merchandise to be sold, wasn't a commodity to be traded for debt relief. She had plans, dreams, a future she had worked years to build. The fashion industry was finally recognizing Middle Eastern designers, and she was positioned to become part of that movement. Her mother emerged from the bedroom where she had been listening, years of financial stress having aged her prematurely. Layla's gentle voice carried the weight of terrible necessity as she explained the mathematics of their survival. If Farhan went to prison, what would happen to Omar's education? To their family's reputation? To their very ability to survive in a society that showed no mercy to the fallen? The argument continued through the night, voices rising and falling like waves against a crumbling shore. Dalia pleaded, bargained, offered to find work to help pay the debts. But the numbers were impossible, the timeline too short. By dawn, exhausted and cornered by circumstances beyond her control, she had surrendered to the inevitable weight of family obligation and social expectation. What none of her family knew was that Dalia's heart already belonged to someone else. Nader Aziz had entered her life during her second year at Central St. Martin's, an Egyptian architecture student at University College London whose passion for sustainable design matched her own commitment to ethical fashion. Where other wealthy Middle Eastern students in London flaunted their parents' money, Nader worked part-time jobs to afford his education, his scholarship covering only tuition. Their love had developed slowly, built on long conversations in Hyde Park about changing the world through design, affordable dinners in Brick Lane where they debated the intersection of tradition and innovation, and shared dreams of establishing a creative partnership that would span architecture and fashion. Nader's vision of buildings that responded to their environment perfectly complemented Dalia's designs that honored cultural heritage while embracing contemporary aesthetics. Their physical relationship had evolved naturally over months of emotional intimacy. In London's liberal environment, far from the conservative expectations of their homelands, they had moved in together during their final semester. Nader treated her as an equal partner in every sense, intellectually, creatively, romantically. Those 6 months represented the happiest period of Dalia's life, waking beside someone who loved her mind as much as her body, collaborating on projects that combined their disciplines. The relationship had ended abruptly when graduation forced them back to their respective countries. Nader returned to Cairo to fulfill mandatory military service obligations, while Dalia came home to Dubai expecting to launch her career. They had maintained constant contact through encrypted messaging apps, planning their reunion once Nader completed his service and could travel freely. Nader's messages had grown increasingly desperate as rumors of Dalia's engagement reached him through mutual friends in London. His final communication, sent the night before her wedding, was filled with betrayal and rage. He couldn't understand how she could abandon everything they had shared, everything they had promised each other, for an arranged marriage to a man old enough to be her grandfather. The address downtown hotel had been transformed into a vision of impossible luxury for the wedding celebration. The presidential ballroom sparkled with thousands of white roses cascading from crystal chandeliers, while golden candelabras cast warm light across silk-draped tables. No expense had been spared in creating an event worthy of Sheikh Saif's reputation and social position. The guest list represented Dubai's most influential circles: government ministers whose policies shaped the Emirates' future, business magnates who controlled billions in regional commerce, socialites whose approval determined social standing, and diplomatic figures whose presence added international legitimacy to the union. The bride price alone, 2 million dirhams in gold jewelry presented to the Farouqi family, exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. Dalia moved through the preparations like a beautiful ghost, her emotions carefully hidden behind layers of professional makeup and styling. The custom Lebanese couturier gown fit her perfectly but felt like a burial shroud. Hairdressers arranged her long black hair into an intricate updo crowned with a diamond tiara worth more than her father's former company, while makeup artists transformed her tear-stained face into a porcelain mask of bridal radiance. The ceremony itself was conducted by a senior Islamic judge in the hotel's private chapel, combining traditional Emirati customs with contemporary luxury. Sheikh Saif stood beside her in a traditional bisht over a custom-tailored suit, accepting congratulations with the satisfied air of a collector who had acquired exactly the piece he wanted. Throughout the proceedings, Dalia's responses were mechanical, her mind focused on survival rather than celebration. The reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. Guests praised the bride's beauty and the groom's generosity, while traditional Emirati dancers performed between courses of fusion cuisine that combined local flavors with international sophistication. Sheikh Saif played the role of devoted husband perfectly, his hand possessively resting on Dalia's throughout the evening, marking his territory with subtle but unmistakable gestures. As midnight approached, the guests began departing with elaborate well-wishes for the couple's future happiness. The newlyweds were escorted to the penthouse bridal suite, where rose petals decorated the king-sized bed and champagne chilled in a silver bucket engraved with the Al-Mansouri family crest. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded like a death knell, sealing Dalia's fate in a golden cage where her new husband's true nature would soon be revealed. In a cramped Cairo apartment where peeling paint revealed the building's poverty, Nader Aziz sat before his laptop screen, watching social media coverage of Dalia's wedding unfold in real time. The live stream from Dubai showed impossible luxury. Crystal chandeliers reflecting off silk gowns, government ministers raising champagne toasts, traditional dancers performing for an audience representing the Gulf's most powerful elite. Each image felt like a knife twisting in his chest. The woman he had loved completely, planned a future with, shared the most intimate moments of his life, was now married to a man old enough to be her grandfather. Nader's friends had tried consoling him throughout the day, their words hollow against his devastating loss. By midnight, scrolling through endless photographs of the lavish reception, Nader's grief had transformed into something darker. The alcohol didn't help. Empty bottles littered his table as he stared at wedding photos showing Dalia in her designer gown, diamonds glittering at her throat, her hand resting in Sheikh Saif Al-Mansouri's. He could read the subtle signs others would miss. The tension around her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached them, the careful positioning suggesting reluctance rather than joy. If he couldn't have her, if she had chosen wealth over their love, then let her new husband discover exactly what kind of bride he had purchased. Nader's phone contained dozens of intimate photographs from their London days, images Dalia had sent willingly during their relationship, moments of passion captured in their shared apartment when their future had seemed unlimited. His contact in Dubai's hospitality industry was Mahmoud Al-Rashid, an Egyptian expatriate who worked as senior concierge at the Burj Al Arab. They had bonded over their shared Cairo origins and the challenges of building careers far from home. Mahmoud had mentioned his extensive network among the city's luxury hotels, how information flowed through Dubai's service industry like water through carefully constructed channels. With shaking fingers fueled by jealousy and alcohol, Nader selected the most compromising photographs and sent them to Mahmoud. Let them know who they're really dealing with, he typed, vision blurred by tears and rage. Make sure the right people see these. Mahmoud Al-Rashid had built his reputation on discretion and information management during 8 years in Dubai's luxury hospitality sector. Working at the Burj Al Arab had taught him that wealthy clients paid handsomely for privacy, but occasionally they paid even more for its opposite. When Nader's message arrived with its explosive attachment, Mahmoud immediately recognized the opportunity. Sheikh Saif Al-Mansouri's wedding was the talk of Dubai's elite circles. The shipping magnate's marriage to such a young, beautiful bride had generated both admiration and envy among the city's most powerful families. Information about the Sheikh's new wife, particularly information that could damage her reputation, would be invaluable to the right buyer. Mahmoud's most valuable contact was Rashid Al-Zabi, a former Dubai police officer who now managed personal protection for several wealthy families. The two men had worked together before, trading information that kept their employers informed about potential threats or social embarrassments before they became public scandals. The photographs Mahmoud forwarded were devastating in their implications. In conservative Gulf society, a woman's purity represented not just personal virtue but family honor. For a man of Sheikh Saif's status to discover he had been deceived about such a fundamental matter would trigger explosive consequences. Rashid studied the images on his phone screen, recognizing immediately their potential to destroy lives. The wedding reception was still ongoing when he received the message, and he could see Sheikh Saif through the ballroom's glass doors, laughing with government ministers while his hand rested proudly on his bride's shoulder, completely unaware his world was about to crumble. Rashid waited until guests had departed and the couple had retired to their penthouse suite before approaching the restricted elevator. This conversation would require absolute privacy, away from witnesses who might later testify about what they had seen or heard. The penthouse bridal suite offered panoramic views of Dubai's illuminated skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Dalia stood at those windows in her silk nightgown, still wearing the diamond necklace Sheikh Saif had given her as a wedding gift. She was desperately trying to delay the inevitable moment when her new husband would expect to consummate their marriage. Sheikh Saif emerged from the marble bathroom wearing a monogrammed silk robe, his phone buzzing persistently with urgent messages from Rashid. The security chief's texts grew increasingly insistent about needing to speak immediately regarding his wife. Initially, Sheikh Saif dismissed the interruption. Nothing could be important enough to disturb his wedding night. But Rashid's persistence broke through his euphoria. the urgency suggesting something far more serious than routine concerns. When Rashid finally called directly, his voice carried tension that made Sheikh Saif step toward the suite's private study. The security chief's words were carefully chosen but unmistakably clear. Information had surfaced about the bride's background that required immediate attention and could not be discussed over the phone. Against his better judgment, Sheikh Saif agreed to meet Rashid in the elevator lobby. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes, but those minutes contained enough poison to transform celebration into catastrophe. Rashid showed him the photographs on his encrypted phone, each image revealing intimate moments between Dalia and another man, passionate encounters proving beyond doubt that his carefully purchased bride was not the pure virgin he believed himself to be acquiring. Sheikh Saif's face remained eerily calm as he studied each photograph, but Rashid could see rage building behind his eyes like pressure in a volcano. His breathing became controlled, deliberate, the kind of forced composure that preceded explosive violence. Rashid was dismissed with instructions to delete the images and forget this conversation had occurred. Sheikh Saif returned to the penthouse suite, closing the door behind him with the soft click of a trap being set. Inside, Dalia remained by the windows, unaware that her past had caught up with her in the most devastating way possible. The golden cage was about to become a tomb. Sheikh Saif re-entered the penthouse suite with the measured steps of a predator approaching wounded prey. His face maintained the calm composure that had served him well in boardrooms and political negotiations. But beneath the surface, volcanic rage threatened to erupt. The photographs burned in his memory like acid, each intimate image a personal humiliation that demanded violent retribution. Dalia remained by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her silk nightgown catching the lights of Dubai's skyline as she gazed out at the city that had become her prison. She sensed the shift in atmosphere immediately, the way her new husband's breathing had changed, the deliberate quality of his movements that suggested barely controlled fury. When she turned to face him, the expression in his eyes made her stomach clench with instinctive terror. Without preamble, Sheikh Saif pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. The intimate photographs from her London apartment with Nader filled the display, moments of passion and tenderness that had once represented love, but now served as evidence of her supposed betrayal. Dalia's face drained of color as she recognized images she had believed were private, sacred memories of a relationship that had meant everything to her. Her desperate attempts at explanation fell on deaf ears. She tried to make him understand that Nader had been her university boyfriend, that their relationship had been genuine love, not some casual affair. She begged him to see that her past didn't diminish her worth as a person or her commitment to their marriage. Her tears, her pleading, her attempts to explain the context of young love in a foreign country only deepened his rage. In Sheikh Saif's traditional worldview, her explanations were irrelevant. He had purchased what he believed to be an untouched bride, paid handsomely for the privilege of being her first and only intimate partner. The fact that another man had known her body, had shared her bed, had claimed what Sheikh Saif considered his exclusive right, represented an unforgivable deception that struck at the very core of his masculine pride. The violence escalated with terrifying speed. What began as shouted accusations became verbal abuse, then physical assault. Sheikh Saif's hands found her throat with practiced precision, his fingers closing around her delicate neck like a vice. Dalia's desperate struggles grew weaker as oxygen fled her lungs, her vision darkening at the edges as she clawed futilely at his iron grip. Her final moments were a blur of terror and regret. She thought of her parents sleeping peacefully in their small apartment, believing their daughter was beginning a new life of luxury and security. She thought of Nader in his Cairo apartment, unaware that his jealous revenge had sealed her fate. She thought of the fashion designs she would never create, the life she would never live, the children she would never bear. When Sheikh Saif finally released his grip, Dalia's body crumpled to the marble floor like a discarded doll. The diamond necklace he had given her as a wedding gift caught the light one final time before her eyes went dark forever. The immediate aftermath brought a cold clarity that revealed Sheikh Saif's true nature. Standing over his wife's lifeless body, he felt no remorse, only concern for the potential consequences of his actions. His vast wealth and political connections had always insulated him from accountability, and he had no intention of allowing this incident to penetrate that protective shield. Within an hour, his legal team had been activated through encrypted communications. The Al-Mansouri family employed some of the Gulf's most experienced crisis management specialists, lawyers who specialized in making inconvenient problems disappear. Emergency protocols that had been developed for previous situations swung into action with clockwork precision. The death certificate would list sudden cardiac arrest as the cause of death, a tragic but believable explanation for a young woman overwhelmed by the stress of her wedding day. The hotel's medical examiner, a man whose gambling debts to Sheikh Saif's associates ensured his cooperation, would sign the necessary documents without conducting a thorough examination. Dalia's body was prepared for immediate transfer to her family, Islamic burial customs providing convenient justification for the rapid timeline that would prevent detailed forensic examination. The fewer people who saw the body, the fewer questions would be asked about the bruising around her throat or the signs of struggle that marked her final moments. For floors below the penthouse suite, Amara Santos pushed her housekeeping cart through the address downtown hotel's service corridors, completing the late-night cleaning rounds that had supported her family in Manila for 7 years. The 34-year-old Filipino mother had built her life around invisible labor, maintaining the luxury accommodations where the wealthy played while she remained unseen and unheard. Her routine that night included restocking the penthouse-level supply closets, a task that brought her within earshot of the bridal suite, just as Sheikh Saif's rage exploded into violence. Through the service corridor's thin walls, she heard the raised voices, the sounds of struggle, Dalia's desperate pleas that cut through the night like broken glass. Then came the sudden, terrible silence that spoke louder than any scream. Amara stood frozen in the corridor, her hands gripping the cart's handle as she processed what she had witnessed. Her work visa depended on maintaining her employer's satisfaction, and her family's survival depended on the money she sent home each month. Speaking out would mean deportation, unemployment, and the destruction of everything she had built through years of sacrifice. But the weight of knowledge settled on her shoulders like lead. Somewhere in that penthouse suite, a young woman had died violently while Amara listened helplessly from the shadows. The moral burden of her silence would prove heavier than any fear of consequences. The phone call reached the Farouqi family at dawn, delivered by Sheikh Saif's personal assistant with rehearsed sympathy. The official story painted a picture of tragic loss. A young bride overcome by the excitement of her wedding day, her heart failing under the stress of new circumstances. The assistant expressed Sheikh Saif's devastation at losing his beloved wife so soon after their union. Farhan collapsed upon receiving the news, his wife catching him as his legs buckled. The man who had sold his daughter to save his family now faced the ultimate irony. His sacrifice had been for nothing. The money seemed meaningless compared to the magnitude of his loss, blood payment for a transaction that had cost him everything that truly mattered. The funeral arrangements proceeded with unseemly haste, Islamic tradition providing cover for the rapid burial that would prevent uncomfortable questions. The community response was one of genuine sympathy for the grieving family, but beneath the surface, whispered doubts began to circulate among those who knew that young, healthy women rarely died of heart failure on their wedding nights. Layla's maternal instincts screamed that something was wrong, but her voice was lost in the overwhelming grief that consumed their household. The official narrative would hold for now, but truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried beneath lies and money. 6 months after Dalia's death, Sheikh Saif Al-Mansouri stood in his marina office, watching ships bearing his logo navigate Dubai Creek like mechanical sharks. The brief investigation into his wife's sudden demise had concluded exactly as his legal team had orchestrated. Cardiac arrest, case closed, file sealed. The power of billions had once again proven stronger than the pursuit of truth. Amara Santos had been quietly deported back to Manila 3 weeks after the wedding night, her work visa mysteriously revoked for administrative irregularities that materialized from nowhere. The hotel's human resources department cited budget cuts when they eliminated her position, ensuring no awkward questions about why their most experienced housekeeper had suddenly become expendable. The few thousand dirhams deposited into her Philippine bank account served as both compensation and warning. The medical examiner who had signed Dalia's death certificate received a promotion to chief coroner, his gambling debts mysteriously cleared by anonymous benefactors. The only investigation that mattered was the one that never happened. Dalia Farouqi had accepted Sheikh Saif's condolences with the broken dignity of a man who understood the true mathematics of power. When the Sheikh personally delivered an additional 3 million dirhams as compensation for his tragic loss, Farhan's silence was purchased as effectively as his daughter's life had been. The money meant nothing compared to his guilt, but it bought Omar's university education and secured their family's survival. The business contracts Sheikh Saif had promised materialized within months, lucrative deals that rebuilt platinum occasions into something even grander than before. Farhan threw himself into work with manic intensity, organizing events that celebrated the same elite society that had consumed his daughter. Each successful gala felt like another betrayal, but the alternative was destitution and social destruction for his remaining family. But Dalia Farouqi could not be bought, threatened, or silenced by money. The woman who had once been Dubai's most gracious hostess became a ghost haunting her own life. She stopped eating regularly, her clothes hanging loose on a frame that seemed to shrink daily. Sleep became impossible without medication that left her groggy and disconnected from reality. Her once lustrous hair turned completely gray within 3 months, as if grief had drained all color from her world. She spoke to Dalia constantly, carrying on conversations with empty air that made Omar flee to his university dormitory rather than witness his mother's disintegration. Layla would set 2 plates for dinner, insisting her daughter was simply running late from her design studio. She bought fashion magazines and left them on Dalia's old bed, discussing the latest trends with someone who would never respond. The breaking point came when Layla appeared at Sheikh Saif's offices in Emirates Hills, demanding to see her daughter's husband. Security guards found her in the marble lobby, screaming accusations about murder while clutching a wedding photograph torn from their family album. She called him a killer, a monster, a man who had stolen her child's future for his twisted pleasure. Sheikh Saif never descended from his executive floor to acknowledge her presence. His lawyers arrived within an hour, accompanied by mental health professionals who declared Layla mentally incompetent due to severe grief-induced psychosis. She was quietly committed to a private psychiatric facility in Sharjah, her treatment funded by an anonymous benefactor whose generosity came with strict confidentiality agreements. Farhan visited his wife every Thursday, watching her rock gently in a medicated haze while she spoke to their dead daughter. The doctors explained that her mind had retreated to a place where Dalia still lived, where the wedding had never happened, where love and dreams remained possible. It was mercy and madness intertwined, an escape from unbearable truth. The official story held. Dubai's glittering surface remained unmarked by scandal. Sheikh Saif remarried within 2 years, this time to a carefully vetted bride whose purity was guaranteed by more than photographs. The cycle continued, power protecting itself while truth suffocated beneath layers of money and influence. But in a small room in Sharjah, a mother's love refused to die. Layla continued speaking to her daughter every day, keeping Dalia alive in the only way she could, through words that no one would ever hear. Promises that justice would someday find the monsters who prosper in golden towers while innocent dreams are buried in unmarked graves.